These are events that we've been holding about once a season for the past year and a half, and they are collaborations with an organization called Four Freedoms that began as an artist-run super PAC. They're led and founded by Hank Willis Thomas, who's here today, and Eric Gajasman, who I'm sure if you've come before have met previously. The Four Freedoms team is working together across the country to encourage civic dialogue with artists as facilitators of these conversations. They're working on a nationwide billboard project, town hall discussions like these that take place at different museums and cultural institutions across the country, exhibitions and other kinds of activities and opportunities for civic engagement. Each theme of our town hall is focused on one of the four freedoms outlined by President Roosevelt: freedom of expression, freedom from want, freedom of expression, freedom from want, freedom
to worship,
freedom from fear. I know these very well, but you know. Today we're really excited to be talking about freedom of expression. We're specifically focusing in on freedom of expression in terms of how we engage with communities that are not our own. This is so important in the work we do as museum workers, cultural workers, and also as artists. What does it mean to even tell a story that might not be your own? So before we get started, I want to take a moment to talk about MoCA's community, which of course is the city of Cleveland, but more specifically, MoCA is at the edge of the Glenville neighborhood, which is a very important neighborhood in Cleveland's history. It's a historic African-American neighborhood. It's been the home of a lot of community leaders here in Cleveland. And today, or rather the month of July, marks a very important time in Cleveland's history. In 1968, there was an uprising in Glenville that really shaped several decades of how the city functioned, access to power, and there is a really interesting conference taking place for those of you who are going to be here all weekend at Case Western Reserve Social Institute. They are commemorating the Glenville uprising at a conference that will take place at Martin Luther King Library today between 12 and 4:30, and tomorrow at Case's Harkness Chapel at 2 to 5. I also want to mention one of Front's amazing projects with a local artist named Julie Patton. Julie is an important community leader in Glenville and a fantastic artist who has been taking care of a very important archive. She's leading a tour of Glenville and the archive that she's been caretaker of today, leaving from Front's front porch at 2:30. So just after this talk, if you make your way over there, you can join that tour. Okay, so let me get started with another important housekeeping. We want to thank our generous funders because they have been so supportive in making these important events happen. Margaret Cohen, Kevin Rowley, the Ohio Arts Council, Thompson Hine, and Jones Day. We couldn't do this without you. We'd also take a moment to suggest that you join us in supporting these events by donating through an app called Mezu, M-E-Z-U. If you like what you hear today, you can donate digitally to MoCA through this hometown app. It gives you the ability to give, get, and donate money while keeping your personal identity and spending habits private. You can download it at the Apple Store, and the app will give you $5 just for signing up, and you can donate that to MoCA or wherever you wish, but everything helps us do these kind of programs. These programs are acts of civil discourse. As such, we appreciate everyone's mutual respect, active listening, and authentic empathy with one another as we talk about today's topic. We have a fantastic group of people, artists, and collaborators who have come here today to share their experiences working together. Front artist Johnny Coleman and his community collaborator Bonita Wagner Johnson. Can you guys raise your hands so everyone knows who you are? filmmaker Catherine Gund and her collaborator Elle Hearns. Front artist John Riepenhoff and his collaborator Patrick Kearns. And our moderator Tanya Selvaratnam. Tanya is a writer, an actor, an activist, and an Emmy-nominated and Webby winner producer. With Laurie Anderson and Laura Michelle.
Oh, that's enough. No, they don't need
okay.
a bio.
I'm sure Tanya will tell you more about herself as we go. But thank you, everyone. Tanya, please continue.
Yes, and our surprise guest, Hank Willis Thomas.
Who needs no introduction in this town anymore?
So I just want to say I am so happy and honored to help facilitate this conversation today. This is my second time in Cleveland, and it's always a happy, happy time. I came here a few years ago to show a film by Catherine Gund, Born to Fly, at the Cleveland Film Festival. And I was so excited to be here yesterday and meet so many of the people from the organizing community who helped 10 days ago get that ballot initiative submitted. And what the people of Cleveland and Ohio did for the Safe and Healthy Initiative really inspired me yesterday, and I'm looking forward to taking that story back to my community in New York. I am happy to be with all of you here today. I want to thank the panelists. I want to thank MoCA for hosting us, and I want to thank all of you for listening and for contributing to this conversation. I'm going to propose a very kind of simple structure for the next 75 minutes or so. We're going to start with a moment of silence. Then we're going to move to a moment of sound. Then we're going to move to moments of conversation. And then we're going to end with a moment of laughter. So that's how the moments are going to flow. So for the moment of silence, for 1 minute, just to have an intention in your mind. You can have your eyes closed, or you can look around you. And the intention that I'd like you to think about today is for the families that are waiting to be reunited all over the country. So the moment of silence begins now. Thank you. Now for the moment of sound, I'm always fascinated that people can be right next to each other and not acknowledge each other. So when I facilitate conversations, I like to have people in the audience introduce themselves to somebody they don't know that's also in the audience. And a question I'd like you to ask of each other is, what is the freedom that matters most to you and why? And what usually happens is there's this like beautiful cacophony that erupts with people talking to each other. And I like to feel that this is how we build community. So if everyone can take like 2 minutes to find somebody that they don't know, can be right next to you, just introduce yourself, say your name, and what is the freedom that's most important to you? And that goes for the panelists too.
Hi, my name is Bonita.
I don't know you. I'm Patrick.
I'm Bonita. Oh, David. I love that. Yeah, good name. So what is the freedom that matters most to you?
It's been so long that I had to like think about
What do you want to be free to do?
For me, that would be.
I want to be free to love everybody. Not just who I choose, but just everybody. Especially children. I don't want people to be afraid of me. I have that fear that people may be afraid of me. I want people to love me. To know that I'm like a little girl.
My wife is from Thailand. Yeah, Thailand. So yeah, we just
to live your life without interruption of people doing what, like trying to stop you or something like that, or
say anything you want or call anybody you
complaining
want.
about
That's
it
not to
and
say.
stuff. Yeah. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Be quiet. quiet
Oh my
and
God.
not be able to speak, but still.
But what I believe is, my father taught me that you can be free and peaceful in your mind. You can walk around with perfect peace in your mind. Out of all the troubles that we have, you can be peaceful in your mind. You almost have to be.
I grew up in Kentucky.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, we moved.
No.
And I moved here.
He did a project and he used my voice. I'm a gospel singer.
Yeah, I live here. Yeah. So I'm one of the partners that artists work with. I'm with a local organization, and we work with records.
They did a documentary about him. They won awards too. He left the
It's in with
artwork all over. He used my voice to put in his information, talking about the people.
All across, but I guess right now
That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
For a while, I grew up on Superior Avenue, which is Superior Park.
that's the biggest.
But then when I got like about 12, 13,
All right, moment of sound.
I was so afraid.
Thank you.
It was really a rich neighborhood.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I love hearing people talk to each other. So now we're going to move to the moments of conversation. And as we have these conversation duets between artists and organizers, I do want to encourage those in the audience to feel free to raise their hand if there's something that's being said that really sparks something that you want to say as well. I will keep my eyes open for the hands around the room. Because this is a forum on freedom of expression, feel free to say whatever you like. And for everybody in the room, some ground rules for me is just to remember that we are all humans in this room and we're all humans in this world. And just because we are in the same room, we might not think the same way. So to be open to differences of opinion. The questions that I put forward to our conversation partners is, how does an artist tell the story of a community? How does that community feel about its story being told? And what is the story that is waiting to be told? And because today is this historic day for Glenville, I want to start the conversation with Johnny and Bonita. And so each conversation duet will happen for about 5 minutes, and then we'll open up even wider. But again, if you feel like there's something you really want to say, please raise your hand. Take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can all hear me. All right. 6 months ago, I started spending a great deal of time, every moment that I could get. It was never enough time for me, but spending time building the possibility of being as proximate to the community that is just a few blocks to the north and a few blocks to the west from us where we're sitting right now. 105 runs north and south through the center of Glenville. And we might say that Glenville, maybe the northern end is a couple of blocks north of St. Clair. And the southern end of Glenville, if you're technical about it, maybe just a couple of blocks, really right at Wade Park. But the person that's sitting to the right of me has been a very close friend and a sister to me, and an anchor for the last 22, 24 years. And I met her because as somebody who is not from Cleveland, I was invited to be a participant in a show dealing with contemporary artists and how contemporary artists reveal Cleveland. I'm not from Cleveland. How would I reveal a place that I'm not from and I know nothing about? And I met your father. And from that point on, I've checked in with you, I've checked in with your father, and you've been part of my family. Right. So it was really important to me that in addressing the question of how do you tell a story of somebody else's experience, how do you tell someone else's stories, being a brother who's not from Glenville, I can't tell Glenville stories. What I really needed to do was tell the stories that were entrusted to me, share the stories that were entrusted to me. And Bonita was one of the people who spoke with me. Bonita lives just adjacent to Corey, which is a historic church that's on 105. Bonita lives off of Grantwood that intersects 105 on the north end of Corey. I had the opportunity to speak with an elder who lives directly across from Corey. The oldest person that I spoke to was Anastelle Nunley. And Anastelle spoke to me about the block parties that took place on North Boulevard, between, say, North Boulevard at 99th and 105. Talked to me about the races that would take place. She talked to me about the Tijuana Club that was on the corner directly across the street. Bonita, share with me what Glenville has been to you from early on when you were a little girl who, with your father, first moved to Glenville right off of St. Clair, and then now being back in Glenville at this point in your life right off of Grantwood.
Well, I grew up from a little 3-year-old girl till I was 12 years old off of 79th Street near Superior Avenue. That was the Huff area.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard we was gonna move into Glenville, boy, oh boy, I got really scared. I was like, oh my God, that's a rich neighborhood. What this little nappy-headed girl gonna do around all them high-class folks, you know? I said, oh my God, why did they have to do this? What I'm gonna do? We was afraid of the schools and it was such a rich, beautiful place. I was like, I don't wanna move over there. That's how I was really scared of Glenville. It was absolutely gorgeous. And, but my father wanted to move us, of course, to a better neighborhood. And it was a wonderful place. It was really beautiful.
So what Bonita's talking about is Glenville being a space that was, what's happened in so many different Black communities all over the country is that the village, the community has been dispersed, right? And in Glenville, historically, right over here, just to the left of us, is what was known as the Gold Coast. Doctors, lawyers, politicians, activists, barbers, mechanics, teachers, right? Just a viable, rich, rich community. And that community, one of the elders shared with me, Bonita is one of the people that I spoke with. We have a history that goes back, we're family, but one of the histories that was shared with me and echoed again by Bonita is that Glenville is being strangled for resources, right? Right now, the space that you'll find when you walk through Glenville is not only beautiful historic homes that are directly across the street from the front porch, right, between Ashbury and Wade Park on 105, but if you walk north of Superior, right, walk north of Superior on 105, and you get to Bethany, the first church on the right, and you continue further up and you get to Abyssinian, Greater Abyssinian, the next church on the right, or you walk further up and you get to Corey, you are surrounded with a community that is well, really at a crossroads, and so many of the resources, so many of the structures, so many of the really invaluable components that make up a community have been systematically stripped, right? And so we've got a community that is actually struggling right now. Mm-hmm. And that's home.
Yep.
that's home. When you first moved there, Glenville was so vital, and it is vital now. I'm not at any point going to suggest that. After 6 months of speaking with people who shared with me the beauty and the vitality and the history and the just incredible richness that that community is and has always been, I will never suggest that it is anything less than vital, but the resources have been stripped and removed. Mm-hmm. So when you first moved there, you felt uncomfortable because you felt like you were moving into an area that was very affluent in many ways.
And you know, I know it might sound a little strange, but it was almost like I didn't deserve it, you know. We don't deserve this beautiful place, you know. I had to grow to learn that, just as I had to grow to learn that how beautiful I am as a black woman, you know. I had to learn those things. I didn't know it then, I know it now. But you look on 105 from Superior to St. Clair, and yeah, you see a lot of tore down buildings and a lot of boarded up buildings, but on those off streets, just like on Grantwood, it must be maybe 3 or 4 people that may not cut their grass or something like that, but those people is working to make it beautiful, make it home, you know. I go out there and cut my grass, and next thing you know, you hear lawnmower over there and over there and over there. So I just feel that I want to be an example to the neighborhood more so, you know.
One of the things that you shared with me when we were talking was about like components of community, how at one time there was a man that you had a nickname for, Mule, and Mule would come down the street and he would talk about, hey, Miss Johnson, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And the ways in which, can you talk about like the ways in which people?
It was more of a, just like when I come out my door, everybody on the street know I'm gonna speak to them. Mm-hmm. Just like if I go through here, I'm not gonna go past anybody. That was the way we was raised, you know. I've got to speak, I have to. Sometimes people don't speak back, but I just can't help it. That's their problem, you know. I'm gonna speak to the next person. We was raised that way. Mm-hmm. You know, you holler across like, hey, good morning. Hey, Miss Johnson. That's how, you know, we did it, you know. Mm-hmm. I felt so beautiful the other day, the lady across the street sent her daughters over there to ask me if I had 2 pieces of celery. I said, that's what I'm talking about. That's when I spoke to the lady I didn't know. I said, I want people to not be afraid of me. Mm-hmm. To know that, you know, you don't have to be afraid to say good morning or ask for a few pieces of bread. That's what community do. You should be able to send down the street for a couple of eggs or send your daughter to the store and know that everybody along the street is watching. That's the kind of thing we got to get back to. But I have to insert this one thing before we pass these mics. Mm-hmm. Remember, you asked me, what was the community missing? Mm-hmm. I believe we're missing the spirituality of life, you know. We was all made to go to church. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about no, are you going? It was about, get your clothes on, we all going. Mm-hmm. We all needed that. There you seen the judges and the police officers, everybody was there. Mm-hmm. And it did something, gave us a foundation. And I think I'm not saying that, you know, that everybody should believe in God or what, but you just need some kind of foundation in your life, you know.
Right. Well, on 105, if we were to start just above Superior, the first church there is Bethany, but by the time you hit Pilgrim Baptist, right on between Colony and Marlowe, you will have really walked past or driven past 15 or 16 churches, and that's only if you are not really looking closely. There are closer to probably 25 different churches on 105, black churches, functioning communities on 105. And we, you know, when we speak about Glenville, we tend to think about and speak about a community that is no longer viable and a community that has all these abandoned buildings and vacant lots. And it's really critical to recognize that what's in Glenville are vital, active human beings with stories, with histories, with memories, with aspirations, with families. And I'm forever indebted to each and every one of the elders who took a moment and invited me into their homes. And my prayer really is to honor what was entrusted to me. And that means, first and foremost, what was entrusted to me by those people in that community. That means everything, and I'm incredibly grateful.
Thank you. So now we're going to move to our next conversation duet. John and Patrick, if you can talk about your project. Hearing about your project made me really hungry, too.
All right.
With the Thunder ovens and the spice mix. And
Thanks.
So if you could talk.
So yeah, I'm John, and I'm a front artist, and I was an artist in resident. So Front Triennial invited me here about a year ago. Actually, one of my first conversations when I was doing my research here was with Johnny, and it was good to see an artist working in the community. But I also did a lot of studio visits with restaurants, farmers, and community organizations. I came to look, listen, and taste what was happening in Cleveland. So I come up with a project through that process instead of just importing something from Milwaukee here. But in my research, I met Patrick, and I was really drawn to the food scene in Cleveland. There's really great food, and that comes from having a really diverse amount of cultures that have made Cleveland their home. And one of the most impressive things, or some of the most impressive meals I found weren't necessarily at the restaurants, which I was very impressed by the meals at the restaurants, but they were at the lunches of some of the employees and the students at the Refugee Response Farm that Patrick is the director of. And I'll let Patrick talk about that in a minute, but I'll just say that for my project for the Front Triennial, there's 3 different components. One is I invented a new sausage for Cleveland. It's called the Cleveland Curry Koji Wurst, and I invite you all to try it. It's distributed through the West Side Market, both in bulk and also in prepped at the West Side Market Cafe and Larder Delicatessen on the other side of town. As well as I designed a new beer called the Front Experimental Kolsch, and it's going to be made available at the free concert tonight. So I invite you all to try that as well. And that's part of a project I run called the Beer Endowment, and it's support for artist-run organizations. So all the proceeds after the production cost of the beer go to benefit the artist organizations that the beers are designed structurally after. So we actually innovated a very new beer. The federal government made us call it experimental because we wanted to call it a hoppy Kolsch, but they said no one's ever done this beer before. You have to categorize it as experimental. So that's a place that Front really invited us to get experimental. I should say there's no compromise in the flavor with the experimental. It's a very accessible taste. But so one of the first things when I came here, I was very also inspired by the approach that Front as an organization was taking towards hosting a cultural triennial here in the city of Cleveland. They had me staying at the Madison, which is in Glenville on 105th Street, the neighborhood that we just heard about. And the Front actually renovated an old medical complex that was designed, by my understanding, as the first certified African-American architect in Cleveland. And Front approached the building, they leased it. Instead of spending money to host artists at hotels, they basically pooled that money together, found other community partners, and renovated this building to use it as a residency space during the run of the show. So for a year now, I've been coming and staying and getting to know that neighborhood. But the attitude of being very resourceful and doing an event that happens once only every 3 years, but to invest and build infrastructure that's going to have a lasting impact on a community. That's what inspired me to do the third tier of my art project here, which is I did a lot of interviews with Patrick and his coworkers and students, and I learned about tandoor cooking, which is a very, very early form of wood fire cooking, and it's a tool that is very popular in Southeast Asia and Afghanistan, in Pakistan, India, Burma, and through having these conversations, I learned how to make a tandoor oven, and I built this structure at 3 different public spaces around Cleveland. One at the Refugee Response Farm, one at the backyard of the transformer station, and one at the back porch or the front porch, which is also in Glenview here. So at that oven, we're going to be using it as a tool to both learn about culture. There's a lot of recent immigrants that Patrick works with, that he supports and trains, and we're going to be using the oven at special events, and they're going to be using it for their own events, but to basically learn about each other's culture. And one thing that I found was I think there's a lot of anxiety about otherness in our world, and the one thing that can really quell that anxiety is food, sharing a meal, and, as you said, conversation together. So basically, these sculptures will be used as social architecture to invite people to come together and share in a meal.
And there's public programming around these tandoor ovens.
Yeah,
right?
so it's not
And how
all
do
on the
people
schedule
find out
yet, but
about
we
it?
will, yeah. And Patrick, you should talk about the Refugee Response Farm, and then we can talk about the spices too if we get that far.
Sure thing, absolutely. So the Refugee Response Farm is the Ohio City Farm in the near west side, if you're all familiar with that, which is right next to the West Side Market. We had a lot of meetings throughout this process, and it was a little over a year where we were meeting together. But I think my favorite single meeting happened. This was probably about 2.5 months ago, 3 months ago. John came down and we went to the West Side Market after they had come up with the Koji Wurst blend, the spice blend. And so we're sitting in the West Side Market Cafe, and the purpose of this meeting, and representatives from Front are there, John's there, is to try to make this accessible to the local butchers and restaurateurs in the area, and especially in the West Side Market. So on one side of the table, we have a lot of people from the nonprofit, from the art world, and the other side of the table, we have proper Cleveland butchers who are walking in their aprons that are at times covered with blood and remnants, who are sitting on one side, and John starts to explain about the project. And he starts off, he's speaking about, Front International. He's talking about the initial drafts of the sausages, and you could see, the butchers didn't quite know what to make of this. And then the sausage came on the table, and everybody started eating it. And after another 10-minute conversation, all of the butchers bought into this sausage. They all said, we're going to agree to participate in this project. We want to represent this. We want to show this at our stands. And that kind of became emblematic in a way for this whole process for me, because on the Ohio City Farm, we built a tandoor oven, and we had a great group of volunteers come out, work with us. John led the process. And you walk up there, it's the Ohio City Farm. It's very accessible, and it's right next to a big market area in Cleveland. And what we want is people to walk in there and say, what is this thing? Oh, it's a tandoor oven. Well, why is it here? Well, it's here because there are over 100 Afghan families that have been resettled to Cleveland because they fought alongside of the U.S. forces overseas in Afghanistan, and they were hunted by the Taliban. So that one way, through the sausage, through the tandoor oven, is more than just those things themselves, but it's a way to start this conversation and start it through action, start it through material, not start it through just words, but start it through this process of, here's food, here's the naan bread coming out of the oven, and now let's learn more about these people that are right there. So, I think it's interesting because when we talk about the Koji Wurst sausage and we talk about the tandoor oven being in the middle of Ohio City, your first thought might, oh, that's odd, that's a weird juxtaposition. But then as soon as you look one level past that and you turn the page a little bit and you see all this richness and all this culture is right there, like as our friends were talking about just before us. These things are there, and at times they don't come across at first glance or at first blush. But, once you peel back the surface, there's an incredible amount of richness in this community. And I think we were very fortunate to partner with John and with Front to be able to put a magnifying glass in a certain way on these things.
Now we're going to move to Catherine and Elle for our last conversation partners.
Okay, we're not officially artists representing Front, but we worked on a project together called Dispatches from Cleveland. And I just want to say, as artists, I think that we are curious and confused and perplexed by this crazy world we all live in. And as we all have these thoughts and feelings and confusions, I think artists are constantly making an effort to try to make sense through their artwork. And so as a documentary filmmaker, I've always approached my work as a way to answer questions that I have. And I've wanted to look at my work. I've made my films as organizing. So I look at my filmmaking as doing organizing work. And at some point, I'm from Cleveland, but I live in New York City, and at some point I thought I would try to actually put organizing on film, which is a challenge because a lot of organizing is on the computer or on the phone or in meetings, so it's not very visual and exciting. But I wanted to put organizing on film, and some of my friends and colleagues in Cleveland and in Ohio were organizing around the murder of John Crawford. And so I was talking to them, and we were gearing up to kind of follow the Ohio Students Association and make a film with some of the folks that were working in that framework. And during that time, it all became very personal, I think, for all of us. But when Tamir was killed, we had started working on the film, and then Tamir was killed. And I want to recognize that Samaria Rice is here with us. And we can talk more about how we collaborate. Maybe you'll join us in saying something about that. So when that happened, I also have 4 children who are African American. My 3 boys, 2 of them were 2 years older than Tamir when he was killed, and 1 of them was 2 years younger. And so that really brought the project home to me. During that time, Black Lives Matter was evolving and developing, and I met Elle. I'll let her talk about how we met. And she's the one who introduced me to Samaria. And then I can mention more about what the film is about, but that's how it came to be.
Yeah, how did we meet? Wow. So thank you for that, Kat. Also, shout out to Miss Samaria Rice, who I'm forever indebted to and thankful for her friendship and love and generosity when she didn't have to do any of those things or offer those things to anybody. I met Catherine Gunn actually in New York City, outside of Ohio, at a panel at the very beginning of Black Lives Matter that we organized called Do All Black Lives Matter, where we were posing a theoretical question around whose lives are we remembering and honoring and fighting for, and whose are we not. And it was during that panel when Kat actually came up to me afterwards and was like, "Oh my God, you're from Ohio." And I was like, yeah. It's not very often you find people outside of Ohio who are excited about that. So naturally, I was like, "Are you from Ohio?" And I had no idea that she was a filmmaker, had no idea her relationship to this city or any of those things. So it was very organic, our meeting. I think we touched base maybe weeks after. And we talked more about Dispatches from Cleveland, which at that time was called A Moving Body. And it was the very beginning of, I believe, the project, and I think Kat was still trying to figure out what direction she wanted to go in. And I was just very clear with Kat that although I was organizing and doing a lot of organizing work around the murder of Black trans women in the city of Cleveland, I was not from Cleveland, and so I couldn't hold those stories or claim them. And I was also very clear with Kat that she was white. And never in a million years, even to this day, would I ever be comfortable with white people holding Black people's stories. And that was really, really important for me to continuously remind her as we completed the film and as we got closer and closer into my work, which I think of my work as an organizer as art. And so part of my job is not only to make sure that there's access to people and communities being able to tell their story, but that people who are accessing the stories are able to feel the realities of what people are experiencing. And so Dispatches from Cleveland, I hope, gave people the opportunity to really understand the dynamics of organizing and the strains of organizing personally and professionally. Yeah, I think that Dispatches from Cleveland, and Kat can talk more about it, was really a great entry or a great look at what it was like to actually put art and organizing to film.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really important for us to acknowledge that how important and vital mobilization and protest and community organizing is, because that's how we create a public demand for racial equity or for whatever we're hoping people will demand, and that without, you can't get to the Civil Rights Act without Birmingham and Selma. You just can't get there, and that's what changes the political tide. And this seemed like an opportunity to say, yes, here are these stories that people want to tell, and we can take them from Cleveland. This one, the more specific we were in our storytelling, I think the more universal it became, that it was something that now people use this film in states and places all over the country, because they can still say there are these intersections, these roads, these sites of police violence, these sites of the murders of trans women of color, these sites of formerly incarcerated leadership that are popping up everywhere all over the country. And I think people look into those things. And so I love that Elle just said, organizing is an art, because I always say my art is organizing, and I think that's why our relationship and our collaboration went so deep and continues. I mean, we keep talking about the film when we've done panels together, and we're able to see the impact that it's having. And to me, when I say filmmaking is organizing, it's because I'm not trying to tell anybody else's story, and Elle speaks to that, that for me it's about saying, how can my craft and my tool and my chosen mode of production help amplify stories that are unheard and stories that need to be told and movements that are in process, that the quicker and bigger they're amplified, the more impact they'll have and the more policy they may change.
And politically, I think the stories are still untold. And that's the beautiful thing about this, is that you got to see such a large depiction of many stories, but the reality from all of those stories is those stories continue and they go on. One of the critical pieces for us were, I think the film largely displays an action that we organized delivering petitions to McGinty's office, who no longer serves in this city, which I'm really excited about. And I'll share that publicly and openly. But even the stories after, you have Tamir Rice, who should never be forgotten and should always be lifted up as a reminder to this city that those stories are still untold. In the grief, in the despair that people experience, including the family, most importantly the family, that's still an untold story. So, when you have access to art, you have access to the truth, and that's really what I hope we understand about those stories that are untold.
Thank you.
Can I just ask Samaria if she'd
Please.
like to, you don't want to say anything? Okay, thanks for being here.
So I'd like to give a hand for all of the conversation duets. The examples that they have set for us about what can happen when artists and organizers come together to make change in their local communities and create that ripple effect beyond their communities has really inspired me today to hear about all of you. And I want to open up the floor for conversation now for about 15 to 20 minutes. Any ideas that have been sparked, questions that you are really wanting to ask. And before I open it up, I also want to acknowledge Ms. Rice, because I met her for the first time today. And yesterday, Catherine took me to see the exhibition at Spaces. How many of you gone to see it? Not enough. You must. The opening is tonight. Go to Spaces and see, and you will see her art as well. She has art in the exhibition. It's really stunning and so moving. So now we open up the floor for the conversation. Yes, and do we have mics?
We have one mic going around, and if you guys can help out.
I do have one thing to say, and thank you guys for having me. I do want to say one thing about the Glenville area, and I was very, I guess it was in the 90s when I started going around that Glenville area, and what I want to say about it, I never knew it was a rich neighborhood. I only knew it for what I seen it from the 90s on up. And what I see over there happening today, I'm just not pleased with it. I do believe it's too many churches in that neighborhood, and by it having so many churches, the community is not getting served the correct way. And I don't know how we can break that or help with ideas and things like that, but I do know that it's politically strained. Let me say that it's politically strained. It's just not strained, it's politically strained. A lot of pastors in that neighborhood backed Frank Jackson, and if you backed him, there's nothing being done about that community, and there's a few community leaders over there as well. I don't really see the work that's being done in that community. So I just wanted to say that collectively, if people have things to, that can help that community, I know I would like to help that community, but I just don't know where to start. And it's not so much of me with the political people, it's the people. You know, it's our people that needs the training, to have the conversations, and to be woke up about their own neighborhood first and foremost. So I just want to say that. And also, filming with Kat was wonderful. And we had a lot of time filming, and I was just really nervous filming, but I just said what was on my mind. So if I sounded it like I was out of it, yes, I was still out of it. And I'm probably gonna always be out of it. It's not easy to deal with what the city of Cleveland has put on me. They have put a position of leadership on me that I did not ask for. So I have to be the way I am, you know what I'm saying? And I don't mean to come off no type of way, but this is the way I am. I was living a private life, and it got interrupted with a knock at the door in a split of a second. You know, 2 boys and 2 girls at home, and I sent 2 children outside one day, and only 1 come home. So it's very straining to me that I have to be even put in this position. But I do have a culture center that I'm building in memory of Tamir, and I hope you all get a chance to see it and support it. We plan to open up next year, have a grand opening for his 17th birthday. So thank you.
Thank you. And Bonita and Johnny, I was wondering, because she brought up an important question, which is, where do people start if they want to help? And that was actually a question I had too when I was listening to, and I was wondering if you wanted to answer that for people that want to get involved with Glenville.
Well, my thing is children, because they bendable, you know. We get to a certain age, and I'm sorry, I almost be afraid to even speak to some of the older folks. But the children, before I left home, my father had a church before he passed away in 2006, and he passed it on to me, full of young adults and little children, you know. And that's what we worship on the Sabbath. I left my home with them still there. And before I left, there was 4 children, including a teenager, in the car next door, because you can hear the singing and hear all of what's going on out of my house. And they sit in the car to listen, you know, the people across the street and those, you know. And the little girl asked me, "You coming back?" I said, "Yes, I'm coming back." "What you gonna do when you come back?" I said, "I'm gonna go back in there and sing. You wanna come in with me?" "Yeah." I said, I'll be back after 2. I can work with those little children, you know, and that's where you build community. Starting with the little children and the teenagers, work with them, you know. That's what I believe.
Can I really quickly, just a concise answer from my perspective? Listen, right? Listen. So that's a place. I mean, the people on the ground, you got to listen, right? And what I'm trying to say by that is, for those of us who want to learn, close here, open here.
Okay. Yes.
It's actually, I'm glad I came off after that, because that's what I was going to say is there's a statistic with our incarceration problem, which of course hits our black youth the hardest. 1 in 300 males 18 to 25 were locked up across the United States. Compare that to a white male in the same group, it's 1 in 1,000. Now, that shows you that our children, especially in the age range of like 10 to 15, that's like the vulnerable area. As we know, that's where bad things are really going sour there. And that's where we need to really focus on. We can't ignore their views. We can't ignore their views. We have to give them a voice. We can't just say, oh, grown folks are talking, because we never get back to them. We never get back to them when we do that. We intend to, but we never get back to them, and then they go do their own thing, and then that's just why we have the problem that we have. A lot of the times we have ourselves to blame for this situation. Of course, there's other things involved, but we have ourselves to blame a lot of times because they say something and we say, oh, it's just kids talking. You gotta listen to what they're saying. Now, we're starting to see a little bit of a change here because, especially with the gun violence happening in schools, there was a great thing that happened. I don't know if any guys were involved with the March for Your Lives that happened down there. It was all kids. When you get these kids these voices, things will change. Things are going to change. I feel like this is what's going to change the whole tide of everything. Now that we're starting to give these kids a voice, because so many things are happening directly to them that we can't. I'm 35. I don't know nothing about this kind of craziness that was going on in schools. It was just starting, but nothing like how it's going on now. So give these kids a voice. These teenagers are talking. We always want to talk about this generation is so rebellious. They're trying to talk to us. We need to listen. Exactly like we need to listen to them because they have good things. And if you give them a voice and you give them some ears, things are going to change.
Can I very quickly? There's a term that is a reflection of a culture and a philosophy that is based in West Africa, and it helps to very much inform how I was raised within the context of African American culture. And that the term is Sankofa. Sankofa translates to go back and fetch it. So when we're also trying to make a space for the kids, I feel like it's critical that the kids also have access to those who've been on the path in that space for decades so that they actually have a template. You know, Hank Willis Thomas and the work that you've been doing for all of these years, right? Like making it possible for those who may be of this generation to have access, direct access to somebody who came before so that they can say, well, here's how we did it. How'd you do it? How'd you get there? Here's how we did it. So to set up a structure where that dialogue can happen across generations.
Thank you.
Can you guys hear me? Good. I was born here in the Glenville area, but I stayed in Seattle for 40 years. But my determination was to come back once I retired, was to come back to Cleveland. And what I've seen here, it's just like devastation. You know, they're building some apartments and stuff, because I live on East Boulevard, behind us. A person that has been there, you know, during the time I was gone, they said they seen the plans for that 20 years ago. So this is purposeful. Don't think that this is, oh, they're building up our community. That is not intentional, though this is purposeful. I tell people, and this is just the truth, you can look at it in the pattern, from slavery, there is an intentional annihilation of our race. If you think it's not, then something is wrong with you. This is all intentional. This is not coincidental. And like she said, we have to start with our children. If they don't know any better, they're not exposed to anything any differently, how are they supposed to do differently? It's up to us to teach our children, to expose to them something differently. I was talking to a congresswoman, and I told her, you need to teach a child. If you want to get back at people and get back at the root of the problem, teach them. Take away a bullet, give them a vote. You want to hurt them? Take away that bullet, give them a vote. You know what I'm saying? Instead of fighting each other, which they plan for you to do, and you stupid enough to do it, go out there and get them the way that you know it'll best affect them. And I'm so serious. I know God brought me back here for a reason, because I live good in Seattle now. It's cute and stuff, but I'm so serious. I'm so serious. But he brought me back here for a purpose, and I'm here to help fulfill the purpose, because I'm going to get to those kids. And we're going to get them, and I'm going to get them out. I'm going to get out, and I'm going to get people to register to vote, especially the young people. I see them walk down the street, and I see couples with kids. I'm like, oh, no, them my babies. Let me come on now. You're going to have to get here. Give me that bullet, and I'm going to give you this vote, okay? So I'm just so serious, and I encourage everybody, too, to do the same.
Thank you.
With all the conversation happening surrounding Glenville, I think it's important to highlight some historic systemic things that transformed Glenville from what it was when you moved in to where Glenville is today, which is still a very resilient community committed to survival. And that's something that is, you can see it throughout the city, you can see it throughout any place where we are in this world, you will see that.
Yeah.
Glenville in particular, but Cleveland, ground zero for redlining, which created segregation, it created walls that limited opportunity, that really perpetuated divestment. That's why Glenville is what it is today. It's exactly what you brought up, Samaria, the concerns about unrest, the politics of Glenville. She hit it right on the head. The truth is that the only way that we will be able to make things better for children, to really build up power, is to go back and invest. And it has been very systemic, right? I'm from Cleveland. I graduated from East High School, where you lived in a neighborhood. When I graduated from college, I went to Case, and I used to live on Wade Park and walk from Wade Park, Crawford, MLK Plaza, to Case for my summer job. Completely different world.
Yeah.
My first job out of college was at Glenville High School. Then I went back to East High to work. And one of my students, Kelvin Jones, had my French book. He said, Ms. Diaz, I got your French book. I said, no, you don't, Kelvin, because he was that type of kid. He's probably that type of grown man right now. I said, let me see. So he showed me his book, and my name was written in the book. And when I had the book in the 90s, it was 20 years old. Wow. And Kelvin had this book, my French book, in the 2000s. So when we look at children, when we look at communities that are struggling, and then we see communities that are doing well, when I go to a community that's doing well, I see jobs, living wage jobs, I see access to health care, I see support, I see the ability to buy a home, I see the ability to purchase food, healthy food, I see the ability to drink clean water. But when we see communities that are struggling, the fact that there's no access to food, health care, jobs, clean water, power, that is all divestment. So we have to go back in and invest so that all of our communities feel and look healthy and safe. But that's not what we currently have. The ballot initiative that you mentioned earlier, that's what we're working on, to divest from parts of our communities that have been destructive, have not been helpful, to invest more dollars to things that are helpful to our communities, to build safety, to build health.
Thank you. And can you say your name and affiliation? And actually, I'm going to go back to the people. I should have had you say your name before. So I'm going to have you say it now.
My name is Shakira Diaz. I live in Cleveland. I work with the Alliance for Safety and Justice, and I'm the Managing Director of Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice. It's important, I'm saying that specifically, because our communities experience the greatest amount of harm and the least amount of support. And while we may not have been viewed as victims or crime survivors. We experience that, but we haven't received the support that we deserve.
I am Marcus Semanis. Some of the groups I volunteer for here, MOCA, and I volunteer for Moms Demand Action, which is where I got the gun violence, and a couple other groups, just really into community. I'm trying to make things work here. So.
Okay, my name is Bakita Edwards. I am nobody. I know I'm just junk talking stuff. I live in the community. I was born and raised in this community, and it's important to me. But I was asked to be the committee person for Precinct Q, which is going to be the cutest community when I get it.
Thank you. And now we have another comment here. We have time for maybe two.
My name is Charles Ellenbogen. I teach in the Cleveland Metropolitan School District, and we buried a student on Thursday. She'd been a high school graduate for 2 weeks, and it was about an hour or so shy of her 18th birthday. I appreciate the intention to involve students, and a few people in this room can attest to the fact that I have tried to involve them with my students. Ms. Diaz came to class, Mr. Green and I have tried to communicate about opportunities. I will just say two practical things. I invite you to look around and see how many teenagers are here right now. When events are planned, there's rarely a teenager there to speak for the kids and say, this is what it would take to get teenagers to show up. And the second thing is publicity. I mean, I try to have my antenna up as much as I can. I had some students recite in the poetry contest around birthing beautiful babies, and that was a wonderful event here. I brought students here on a field trip as well. We don't know. Teachers don't know what's out there, except by virtue of just individual effort. And then third is, I think, a larger citywide issue. I can't tell you how many students have gotten admitted to programs or involved in programs. They can't get there. The bus cards that the city provides cut off at a certain time on weekdays, and they don't work on weekends. And to me, that's absurd. And so we need to know what's out there in some sort of organized fashion, and we need to have students help, represent on these events, and then we need to help them get there.
Thank you.
I can get kids here.
Yes. That was super important. So, and
Tanya, this is Megan. Can I say one quick thing? Hi,
Yeah.
I'm Megan. I work here at MOCA. I just want to let everyone know, for our next year, For Freedoms, we are planning a teen-focused, teen-driven For Freedoms Town Hall at a local high school. More details to come. I'm currently in conversations with the superintendent from a local school district to confirm that. And as soon as we have it, our goal there is to have teens leading the dialogue as a way to engage their voices more deeply.
And I would say one thing to everybody in the room: when you come to gatherings like this, bring someone, bring a young person, tell a young person. Because if it's just the people who are organizing telling them, we need for the community to spread the word as well. And there's also a charge for those who are organizing and hosting to be more inclusive by reaching out to those communities. Because the thing that I've always found, I've been organizing for a long time, and I always have to remind myself, can't expect people to come to you. You have to reach out to them to engage. And that's just something that we really do have to remind ourselves about continually. To continue.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chris McNeil. I'm a criminal defense lawyer, a civil rights attorney as well. I'm not a native Clevelander. I'm originally from Rochester, New York, so I have the pleasure to have been accepted into some of the authentic Cleveland neighborhoods. And I can tell you that, and it's interesting because we had our queen over here say, I'm nobody. In many ways, I'm nobody too. I was just a poor black kid from the inner city and, left to be chewed up, spit out, stomped on, and forgotten by the powers that be. And the fact that on that certain level, I am nobody, I never forget that. I wear it, it puts a chip on my shoulder, and in many ways, it's a badge of honor because I do have the esteemed pleasure to oftentimes be the only one in the room. And let me say, I say that because each person here, we're talking about what can we do, for our children, for these communities. Each person here is a sphere of influence, okay? And some of your influences stretch way further than you may immediately realize. And I say this because, as Ms. Diaz mentioned, we do need investment in these communities. We also need divestment and demolition of some of these oppressive power structures. And quite frankly, some of you are the only people who are in a position to do that. Only you can change the minds of your children. Only you can change the minds of your fathers, your brothers, and your uncles so that they can recognize the humanity of every human being. We had I really enjoyed that question that we had at the beginning, the icebreaker, about what freedoms do we hold the most dear. And for me, it's always been the freedom to be myself freely, to be myself fully, without, and I believe that that's the most important freedom we can have, as it relates to not overextending our freedoms to infringe on others. And I say all that to remind you that regardless of the differences that you might see in individuals, I think that diversity is great, but too oftentimes we tend to focus on celebrating our differences, and we need to remember that we all have the same intrinsic human needs. And again, it's no secret that we have a higher crime rate in our community. It's because they target us for law enforcement so that they can perpetuate the new Jim Crow system, which I will not belabor at this point. But I say all that to say you find crime where you look for it. I think anyone who's been in college knows that you'll oftentimes find the best narcotics in a frat house, but there's a reason why we don't have tactical narcotics teams or drug interdiction inside of the halls where power is passed on. So I ask you all to do your part to dismantle these systems of white supremacy. And I would also encourage these artists to depict minority cultures in a way that not only celebrates their diversity, but highlights their basic humanity, because we are not commodities, we are not oddities, we are human beings, and we all want the same basic freedoms. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we're gonna take one more, and then I want to make sure we have enough time for the moment of laughter and some words from Hank Willis Thomas, who really is the catalyst for us all being here today. So yes, your comment, please.
Hi, so I'm Taylor Thomas. I'm actually a teenager.
Yay!
Yeah, you guys forced me. I wasn't gonna say anything, but since
Let it be
so
known,
I'll
let it be
tell
known.
you, I'm a rising
who else
singer.
is a teenager? Okay.
So I'm a rising singer at Heights High, and Glenville is actually one of our rivals. So, but I'll tell you one thing that us I'm nervous, so my voice crack. But I'll tell you one thing us teenagers like, what we need, and what we absolutely hate. What we hate is being labeled. We have this stigma about us that we're crazy, we're loud, all we want to do is party, and all of us aren't like that. So when we have our community leaders telling us, you need to get more involved in school, you need to do this, you need to do that, when we're trying, it puts us in a state of mind that we're not good enough. And one thing that we absolutely need is mentorship, especially in our greater Cleveland areas. We need those leaders that would, listen to us, but also teach us. We don't need to get, told what's right and what's wrong. We need to get told how to make a path for us, basically. We need that help. We just need help to think, to know how to think right for ourselves. So yeah.
Thank you. Now I would like to segue into a conversation with Hank Willis Thomas. Hank, you don't look excited. How many of you heard of the 50-state initiative? So there are a lot of people who need to hear about it. The 50-state initiative, which is taking place this fall, that is a way that everyone in this room can get engaged with taking back our country.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming and for participating and leading the conversation. I have 3 requests. I was told I have to hear you sing. So maybe we can start there.
I'm old school now. Oh, man.
Yeah, you sing whatever moves you.
Well, let me say, first of all, that before I sing any song, I always, what we call in church, testify, you know. And this song I wrote is called, I'm not going to sing the whole song of it. I'm just going to break it up a little bit and say it. But it's called You Can't See Me. As I told you before, I was always embarrassed at first about who I was, what color I was, my hair, my feet, my just everything, until I grew to learn, oh, my God, I really came from real, live, royal blood.
You are a queen.
Oh, my God, I said, that really is true. I mean, oh, my God. I really came from royalty. So, and then furthermore, you know, the royal blood of Jesus, I came from that, okay? So then my father told me one day, he said, you know, Ray, he said, you're going to sing for the world. Like, I am? Me? So when I go in the bathroom, usually, I'm sorry, but that's when God speaks to me. I know it sounds crazy, but it's such a private, quiet place. So I'm in the bathroom, and I say, oh, my God, wait a minute. He said I'm going to sing for the world, but look at me. I mean, really take a good look at me. I say, oh, my God. I mean, look at Yolanda Adams. She's beautiful. And CeCe Wine, these people are beautiful gospel singers. And look at me. I say, oh, my God, what I'm going to do. And so the Lord asked me, say, well, did you want to kind of change the way you look? And I said, no, I thank you for making me who I am. He said, well, maybe you might want to put a little eyeshadow, a little lipstick. I said, no, I don't want to do that because I thank you for whatever. I appreciate the lip slash you gave me. He said, maybe you want to just kind of shorten your clothes a little bit and kind of open it. I said, no, I'm going to keep myself covered. He said, well, what do you want? Bonita, he said, they can't see you no way. The real you is on the inside of there. People can't see you. Your face is not you. You is in there. Whew. I said, well, I'm cool with that, you know. Still nervous as I don't know what when I get on the stage, but I still go in. But that's where this song came from. Looking at my face, don't tell you who I am. Don't judge me by the way I look, but by the way I live and love. Looking at my face, you can't see me. The way I walk and talk, don't tell you how I feel. A person you can't even see lives way down inside of me. Looking at my face, you can't see me. Inside me there's a child longing to be loved, just like the child the Father sent to save this world from all of their sins. And looking at my face, you can't see me. When Jesus walked this earth, they looked upon his face. He tried to show them who he was. He really is the Son of of God, yes, he is. But looking at his face, they couldn't tell. To get into God's gates, you don't need no pretty face, 'cause that's how Satan got put out. He thought his looks could outdo God, and I'm so glad my looks ain't really me. I'm so glad my face, I'm so glad my face ain't really me. I'm so glad my face ain't really me. Oh my God.
Thank you, Ms. Bonita. And I basically, what the Four Freedoms 50 State Initiative is an invitation to ask people to do things that they wouldn't normally do. So my friend Eric and I approached Andrea and Megan and Will and the whole museum and asked them to do something that they don't normally do, but they do all the time. I think museum public programs are such incredible opportunities for us to look differently and learn more about artwork and think about how it affects and shapes our lives. But when we call something art, it allows us to think differently about things we already know. When we call something political, it implies that there's something at stake. So we created an art project called Four Freedoms, which started off as a super PAC with the goal of putting critical discourse into political discourse through fine art thinking. And it's because of work that you've done, which has, I think, been both political but also creative, and generative, and recognizing that if more ordinary citizens saw themselves as civic leaders and creators, and more civic leaders saw themselves as creative people and ordinary people, and if more creative people saw themselves as civic leaders and ordinary, we might actually have a world that actually can constantly be generative, be open and welcome to change, sometimes even being welcome to change back. And there are many people who have influenced me, like Julio Morales, who's been working with artists forever as an artist and opening spaces, but especially Dawood Bey. So when I heard you say, where did it come from with me, it starts right here. Would you please stand up? Who I hadn't seen till across the room, but this is an artist who's been working with teens pretty much, for 30 years, working with young people, recognizing the value and importance of their voices. And I met you when I was...
But I'm not prepared to say a lot at this moment, other than I'm glad to have the opportunity to be here and to also have the opportunity to be here in the context of this notion that the larger social world and the world that we call the art community are and can be and should be, in fact, engaged in a common conversation. Because as I always tell people, if you look at your ID, it doesn't say that you live in the art world. It says you live in a very specific place. If you're from this country, it says you live in the United States. And if you're from other country, it says you live there. And that, to me, has always suggested that we all have responsibilities that have more to do with a notion of active and engaged citizenship regardless of what particular arenas we function in and work in. So I think this notion of citizenship and engaged citizenship actually takes precedent and priority because it's the thing that we actually all have in common.
And that speaks to the work that you have at the Front Biennial, because sometimes you got to break the law to make the law correct. Wait, I'm not done. And so the Underground Railroad was one of those places where people broke the law as a way to subvert the immorality of the law. And I was hoping you could just say a couple words about your installation there. At the
Well, you know, for me, the work that I've been engaged in, as you know, has always been engaged with this notion of creating at the intersection of the larger social community and the particular ways in which I engage in my own practice. So I don't know that I can say.
What's the name of the piece and what it is?
Say again, huh?
The name of your piece and where
The piece that I have here?
Yeah.
Yeah, here in the Front Triennial, I have a piece that is called Night Coming Tenderly Black. And it's a piece that has to do with the history of the Underground Railroad here in Cleveland and the path that fugitive slaves took in moving through the landscape of both Cleveland, Ohio, and also Hudson, Ohio, as they moved towards Lake Erie and then on to Freedom in Canada. The title of the work, Night Coming Tenderly Black, comes from Langston Hughes' poem, Dream Variations. And the final line in that poem is Night Coming Tenderly Black Like Me. And so the piece has to do with this notion of blackness as a space that can be thought of in multiple ways, and in this context, thought of as a tender space of embrace through which fugitive slaves were moving through the landscape. They were engaged in the process of self-liberation, which is really what the Underground Railroad was, an act of self-liberation as they sought to escape bondage and move through the landscape on the way to freedom. So that project is at St. John's Episcopal Church, which during the antebellum era was known as Station Hope. And that church was actually the final stop where fugitive slaves would take sanctuary before moving on to Lake Erie and then freedom. So that's the context that brought me here in this particular case. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I mean, and so, but the thing about artists' work is that it's never about now, it's always about the future. And sometimes we look at the past for pathways towards the future through the present. And so I'm looking at his work about something that was happening 150 years ago, but also thinking about what's happening currently right now and the struggles that people will likely have to go to in many different ways over in the future to find new opportunities to find emancipation and freedom. And it has to do with collaboration and community collaboration. So the For Freedom's 50 State Initiative is really, for me, just hopefully the beginning of an invitation for us to break our social norms. You know, some might say that there could be time for a new Underground Railroad for those who are looking for freedom, but also we can get liberated through participating in that. And I did want to challenge you, Elle, on this notion of who gets to talk about what, because I am not my face. You know, you can't tell what color I am by looking at my skin. And I feel like there's sometimes people have told me about my stuff about myself that I learn more from than stories I've told from my own perspective. And I think it's important for creative people to take risks, fall flat on their face. Sometimes we got to be told what we did wrong and said wrong. But I think sometimes I don't want people to be afraid to try to tell my story. I don't think they're ever going to get it right.
The challenge is rejected.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't want anyone to ever tell my story, and I received
All your life
that.
you had to fight.
Exactly, and because of that, there's only one person that can tell my story, and I think in relationship to Dispatches from Cleveland, I was very clear that I could never tell Samaria Rice's story. I could never tell the story of Brittany Nicole Kidd Sturgis or Tiffany Edwards or Samaya Dove. Those were not my stories to tell, but what my story was to tell was that we were mad and Black people wanted to be free. So I think within context, you can challenge that, but in reality, the truth is the truth. No one can tell your story like you can, and nobody can talk about your face like you can, and that's always been my experience. So I welcome people into telling your story. I think we get so fascinated with trying to tell other people's story instead of telling our own, and I think that's the real relationship, and a part of our real transformation is our ability to connect to ourselves and the realities that we've lived as opposed to the realities that we're trying to forget.
But I see you and me. And I think that you could also tell my story, and I'd be honored if I ever had a story worth telling that you would be interested in telling. And so we're going to disagree, and I think the beauty of us being able to disagree is you can talk and I'll be like, yes, 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 even though I don't agree with you, because I recognize the necessity of hearing what you have to say and being mindful of how I navigate the world with that perspective. And I just want us to all take chances together, because I think the us and them mentality has led us to very dangerous places in the past. I believe us is them. And I think I'm more interested in having people who don't think that they're like me recognize that I am a part of them, and they are nothing without me. Because I'm nobody, but nobody is nobody, so we're all somebody. And this optimism that seems irrational, stupid, naive, is part of what being an artist is about. Because if anyone ever told me that coming from where my family comes from, experiencing things that we've experienced, that I'd be here with this Canadian lady, with you all looking at me, listening to me, with Dawood, who I've known for 40 years, who was just a person with a camera in Harlem, now is a MacArthur genius. I would have never, ever imagined that we could be here. And I say that because my mother, her name is Deborah Willis, she's an African-American art historian, photo historian, archivist, who recognized that history is there for the telling, and recognized that Black photographers, to your point, were telling a very different story about Black life than mainstream society was telling, and that through inviting artists like Dawood and looking through the archives, that we can really unearth a totally different aspect of American history. And so maybe you're right. But I also want to imagine that as I've seen how my mother's work has developed, and she's started to tell other people's stories through her work, I think there's a new evolution. And so I got nothing really else to say. But I think, Archie, you're supposed to take it from here.
You're going to pass the torch.
No, I'm supposed to coach?
Yeah.
I just want to talk to her.
And we will talk. Because erasure for artists is also very real, especially artists who don't have relationship to power or access or resources. And one of the things that's really important for us to understand is that not everyone has access to MoCA. Not everyone has access to depict a film or to sing a song. So just the ways that we think about access and relationship to visibility and the relationship to gender, race, and class is essential for these type of conversations to understand why, for me and my unique experience, no one anywhere could ever tell my story, which is why I tell only my story, and I don't try to tell the stories of others. But I do try to bring people with me so that their stories can be told and represented. So, Ms. Samara Rice, thank you for being here.
Thank you. So we are coming to a close. I'm going to say a few words, and then we are going to have a great release led by Archie Green. Thank you all for being here and for engaging. The takeaways for me is empower people to tell their stories, listen to them. If you have a story to tell, share it. And if you are an audience member, spread the word. Any other takeaways? Was that okay? Yes, you have one, yes.
So I just wanted to mention that at Heights, I'm also one of the Minority Student Achievement Network leaders, which we work to close achievement gaps. In our school, it's predominantly Black, but in the AP honors courses, you see all the Caucasian kids. So I just wanted to let anyone know that if you need help in your communities, trying to close achievement gaps or with helping students, I'm available, because, yeah, my mom likes to drive me everywhere, so. You can come up to me and I'll give you my number or email or anything.
To artists and organizers who shared information about their projects, everyone in this room can experience them. You can see dispatches from Cleveland and tell people about it. You can visit Glenville and get involved. And you can buy the beer and sausage and contribute back to the community of artists. So now, Archie.
Hello, everyone. My name is Archie Green. I'm the Community Engagement Programs Manager here at MOCA Cleveland. I want to, first of all, again, thank Tanya, as well as all of the artists, the community members. A round of applause, please. And I kind of got put on the spot by Brother Hank, but it's all right. I'm an artist, too. So what we're going to do, after I count to 3, everybody's just gonna laugh. It's good for your energy. It's good for the endorphins. It really is gonna help everybody kind of release. So on the count of 3, we all gonna laugh together. All right? 1, 2, 3. Was that good, Hank? Was that good? All right. Thank you all.